And then the last time I saw her, which was probably minutes before she was taken, when she was lying asleep, and it's terrible. So I went into our bedroom and she wasn't there. And that was the first time really that the panic hit. And I just ran back into her bedroom, and literally at that point, the curtains, which were closed, just kind of flew open. And that was when I noticed that the window was open as far as it could go, and the shutters outside had been raised all the way up.
On the evening of May 3rd, 2007, in the quiet coastal town of Praia da Luz, Portugal, a family's holiday was shattered. By the end of that night, 3-year-old Madeleine Mccann was gone, and the world would never be the same. 18 years later, after millions spent and a prime suspect behind bars, a shocking twist has emerged. In June 2025, it suggested that someone from inside law enforcement may have just helped that suspect walk free. Why would they do that, and what happens now? This story is far from over. Before we analyze the suspicions in the case, please tell me where you saw this video from. I will read it all and spread it to the world. On May 3rd, 2007, the Mccann family was vacationing in Praia da Luz, a peaceful village in southern Portugal. They had traveled from the United Kingdom to enjoy a week-long getaway at the Ocean Club Resort, accompanied by a group of close friends who would later be referred to by the media as the Tapas 7. The Mccanns were assigned apartment 5A on the ground floor. It had 2 entrances, a front door and a sliding glass patio door at the back, which opened into a small garden leading toward the resort's pool and tapas restaurant. The patio entrance became the preferred way in and out for the adults. It was also the more discreet one, requiring no keys. Inside, Madeleine Mccann, just 3 years old, shared a bedroom with her younger twin siblings, Sean and Amelie. She was instantly recognizable by a small coloboma, a rare defect in her right iris that made her eye unique. Her parents, Kate and Jerry Mccann, were both physicians. That evening, the Mccanns made a decision that would haunt them forever. Around 8:30 p.m., after settling their children, they left the apartment unlocked and joined their friends for dinner at the resort's restaurant, approximately 100 meters away. They committed to checking on the children in regular intervals. At 9:05 p.m., Jerry Mccann walked back to the apartment. He later recalled that all seemed fine. He saw Madeleine asleep in her bed, the twins undisturbed. At 9:30 p.m., their friend Matthew Oldfield offered to check on the Mccann children. Instead of walking into the bedroom, he peeked inside from the hallway. He saw the room appeared quiet and moved on, never laying eyes on Madeleine. Then came 10 p.m. Kate Mccann left the restaurant to do the next check. As she approached the apartment, something felt off. The bedroom door, usually left partially closed, was now wide open. Inside, the window above Madeleine's bed was open, the shutter lifted, the curtain blowing in the night breeze. Madeleine's bed was empty. Kate ran back to the restaurant shouting a chilling phrase that would become infamous. "They've taken her!" Her screams sparked immediate chaos. The dinner group scrambled back to the apartment, searching the area. Resort staff were alerted, and within minutes, the news spread. At 10:30 p.m., the local police, the GNR, were contacted, arriving just before 11 p.m. By midnight, over 60 people had mobilized, but there was no sign of the child. Back at the apartment, troubling signs emerged. The window in Madeleine's bedroom was ajar, the shutter raised, yet there were no signs of forced entry. The twins were still asleep. It was a disappearance without a struggle, without noise, and seemingly without witnesses. The initial response from law enforcement drew significant criticism. The first officers on the scene did not immediately seal off apartment 5A. In fact, dozens of people, resort staff, guests, and friends, had moved through the apartment in the hours after Madeleine vanished. Fingerprints were likely smudged, potential DNA evidence compromised. The crime scene had become chaotic and nearly useless from a forensic standpoint. The sequence of events left a critical 30-minute window between 9:30 and 10 p.m. at the heart of the investigation. Was someone watching? Did they know the routine? Adding to the confusion was Kate McCann's cry, "They've taken her." To some, especially early Portuguese investigators, the phrasing was too specific, too certain. Suspicion briefly turned toward the parents. From the beginning, there was friction between the McCanns and the Portuguese police. Cultural and procedural differences led to misunderstandings and growing mistrust. While the parents pleaded for international help, local investigators initially treated the case with guarded caution. Those first few hours were critical and perhaps catastrophic. When officers from the GNR finally arrived, the most crucial opportunity in any missing person case, the golden window, was already closing. The local police were unprepared. They had no specialized training in child abduction and no emergency protocol for such a case involving foreign nationals. They never cordoned off the apartment. By the time investigators began considering the need to preserve forensic evidence, it was too late. More than 20 people had passed through the apartment, unknowingly contaminating what could have been the case's most critical physical evidence. No fingerprints were taken that night. The open window was not forensically examined until much later. Authorities did not initially classify it as a serious criminal event, theorizing that Madeleine might have wandered off. It would be hours before the case was escalated to an official child abduction. By then, a vital opportunity had passed. No orders were given to alert customs or airport officials. It wasn't until the next day that search dogs and helicopters were deployed. The cultural and procedural gap between British expectations and the Portuguese legal system created a vacuum of clarity, which quickly became fertile ground for rumor. Details began leaking to the press. British tabloids painted the Portuguese police as inept. Portuguese newspapers suggested the parents were hiding something. The case had become a media war. In August 2007, Kate and Jerry McCann were formally named arguidos, or legal suspects, under Portuguese law. The tipping point came after search dogs brought in from the UK, trained to detect human remains, alerted in the McCann's apartment and in the boot of their rental car. Though the car had been rented weeks after Madeleine's disappearance, the media seized on this. Headlines screamed of a forensic breakthrough. But beneath the sensationalism, the evidence was far from definitive. No DNA match could conclusively link the findings to Madeleine. The dog's alerts were, at best, circumstantial. And yet, the damage was done. The case veered off course, with resources redirected to building a case against the parents. Behind closed doors, the McCanns were unraveling. In her later memoir, Kate would write, "I felt like we were being investigated instead of being helped." The first 72 hours, statistically the most crucial in any missing person case, were a maelstrom of confusion and missteps. Faced with the failure of the official response, the McCanns turned to the public. They organized their own press conferences and launched a website. To some, this was proactive. To others, it seemed manipulative. The truth was darker. In the absence of institutional support, they had to become their daughter's voice. By the end of 2007, the case was in disarray. What remained were fractured international relations and a family trapped in limbo. Looking back, the systemic failures are undeniable. The crime scene was never protected. Media speculation went unchallenged, and the instinct to blame the parents overshadowed the more urgent need to pursue an external offender. In the days following Madeleine McCann's disappearance, she became one of the most recognized faces in the world. Her photo, wide eyes, soft smile, and that distinctive mark in her right iris, circulated across continents. It was one of the most expansive missing child campaigns in modern history, largely orchestrated by her family. Kate and Jerry McCann launched a website, Find Madeleine, just weeks after her disappearance, designed to gather tips and global awareness. They distributed posters in over 20 countries and appeared on international news broadcasts, all to keep their daughter's name in circulation. They also embraced technology, working with forensic artists to create age progression images of what Madeleine might look like years later. The goal was clear: never let the world forget. In tandem, the McCanns established Madeleine's Fund, which received millions of pounds in donations from celebrities like Sir Richard Branson and J.K. Rowling, as well as concerned citizens. The money helped them hire private investigators and international lawyers, creating a parallel operation to the official investigation. Yet with visibility came scrutiny. Critics questioned how the money was being spent. The McCanns published financial statements, clarifying that the funds were used strictly for search efforts, but doubts lingered. In 2011, Kate McCann released a memoir, Madeleine. The book chronicled her family's ordeal in intimate, emotional detail. Its purpose, Kate explained, was to raise funds and to document the truth for her surviving children, Sean and Amelie. Reception was mixed. Many praised its raw honesty, while others accused her of profiting from her daughter's story. But beneath the controversy lay a deeper psychological truth. Writing can be a form of survival, and for Kate McCann, putting her pain into words may have been the only way to remain intact amid a storm of uncertainty. It wasn't about commerce. It was about exercising control in a world where she had lost nearly everything. The book was something she could create, own, and shape. The public image of the McCanns also began to shift over time. In the early days, they were depicted as stoic, devoted parents clinging to hope in the face of an incomprehensible loss. But as months turned to years, and the media cycle grew colder, a more cynical narrative began to take hold. Some questioned their composure. Why were they not more distraught on camera? Why did they dress well for interviews? Why did they continue appearing on television instead of grieving in private? A particularly harsh strain of criticism accused them of being too calculated, too controlled, as if they were managing their image rather than mourning a child. The idea that they might be hiding something began to resurface, fueled by tabloid speculation and internet conspiracy forums. But the truth, again, was more complex. The McCanns were doing what any parent would do if the systems around them failed. They took charge. They understood that media attention is fleeting. Without their constant presence, without reminding the public, the authorities, and the press, Madeleine's case could quietly fade into the shadows. Every TV appearance, every interview, every controlled message was part of a desperate strategy to keep the search alive. Behind the scenes, though, the toll was immense. Kate and Jerry were living in a suspended reality. Their daughter was gone, but not confirmed deceased. Their grief was paralyzed by ambiguity, their healing denied by the absence of closure. They had to remain hopeful for the cameras while privately enduring what psychologists describe as ambiguous loss, the most painful, unresolved form of mourning. Kate once described waking up each day with dread and guilt. Guilt for leaving the children alone that night. Guilt for being in the spotlight. Guilt for being suspected. Jerry, more reserved, became the logistical backbone of their operation, while Kate's emotional vulnerability took center stage. Their marriage, though strained, became a united front. Two parents bound not only by love and loss, but by the shared mission of bringing their daughter home. Over time, Madeleine became more than a missing child. She became a symbol. Her image was used in child protection campaigns, abduction awareness posters, and global discussions on cross-border policing failures. She represented every child who had ever disappeared without a trace, and every parent who had waited endlessly for an answer. Her face, familiar to millions, was no longer just a photo. It was a statement. This can happen to anyone, anywhere. But symbols, too, come at a cost. As Madeleine's case became more iconic, it also became more politicized. Resources were poured into her search, while other missing children remained ignored. The family received both admiration and resentment. Some felt too much had been done, others not enough. The line between empathy and fatigue blurred. And yet, through it all, the McCanns kept going. Because for them, Madeleine wasn't a headline, a campaign, or a symbol. She was their daughter, and that was reason enough to keep searching, no matter how long it would take. As the years passed, and the mystery of Madeleine McCann's disappearance remained unsolved, a strange phenomenon began to emerge, one that investigators had never anticipated. From various corners of the world, individuals stepped forward to declare a shocking belief that they were Madeleine. Not that they knew where she might be, not that they had seen her, but that they were her. Between 2007 and 2025, hundreds of people contacted authorities, media outlets, and even the McCann family directly, claiming to be the missing child. They came from the UK, Europe, North America, and beyond. Some were teenagers, others adults. Some offered vague memories of childhood trauma, or of feeling different. Others cited physical similarities, a birthmark, a childhood scar, or in the most frequently mentioned case, a coloboma, the rare defect in the iris of the right eye that made Madeleine's face so distinctive. To the public, these claims often came off as bizarre or delusional, but to the McCanns, each one represented an emotional bomb, because what if, this time, it wasn't a hoax? The most high-profile of these cases came in early 2023, when a young woman from Poland, named Julia Wendell, sent shockwaves through the internet by publicly announcing she was Madeleine McCann. Julia, then in her 20s, stated that she had little to no memory of her early childhood and claimed her family had long refused to give her access to her birth certificate. Her physical appearance bore certain superficial similarities to Madeleine's projected adult features. But more than that, Julia came armed with what she presented as evidence. Photos of her eye, which she believed showed a coloboma, and a mark on her leg, which she said matched one from Madeleine's early pictures. Julia's claims went viral almost instantly. Her social media accounts attracted hundreds of thousands of followers, and media around the world scrambled to interview her. She appeared on international television, participated in online live streams, and released comparison videos. Many believed her, others mocked her, but no one could deny that the world was watching. Under increasing pressure from public speculation, the McCann family agreed to a DNA test. They had nothing to lose, and perhaps everything to gain. The results came in quietly weeks later. There was no genetic match. Julia Wendell was not Madeleine McCann, and neither was anyone else who had ever claimed to be her. Over the past 15 years, every single person who came forward with such a claim was ruled out, whether through DNA, medical history, or inconsistencies in their stories. But the question remains, why would someone falsely believe or pretend to be a globally known missing child? According to psychologists, the answer lies in identity, trauma, and attention. Some individuals experience what is known as identity confusion, often linked to childhood neglect, adoption, or family dysfunction. When people grow up lacking clear answers about their past, it becomes easier to project their pain onto an existing narrative, especially one as well documented and emotionally charged as Madeleine's. In other cases, the motivation may stem from attention-seeking behavior, a deep psychological need to be seen, validated, or even rescued. The idea of being the world's most searched-for child brings with it a twisted form of comfort. If I'm her, then I matter. I'm not forgotten. Some of these individuals may genuinely believe their story. Others may knowingly deceive. But whatever the motivation, the consequences are real, especially for the McCanns. Every false claim forces the family to revisit their pain. Each possibility brings a moment of hope, followed by inevitable disillusionment. Kate McCann once described these moments as a cruel form of emotional whiplash. First the call or email, then the rising anticipation, then the reality. It happens again and again. Hope, verification, heartbreak, a cycle that leaves deep, invisible wounds. Beyond the emotional toll, these claims have a tangible impact on the investigation. Each public declaration pulls attention and resources away from legitimate leads. In high-profile cases like Julia Wendell's, police and private investigators are often forced to divert their time toward confirming or disproving someone's identity. In Julia's case, the media storm consumed weeks, giving many in the public the false impression that the case was nearing a resolution. Instead, it was a false signal, a distraction dressed as hope. Worse still, social media plays a dangerous role in amplifying these false narratives. Well-meaning individuals share posts, engage with speculative videos, and demand updates, often before any facts are confirmed. A viral post can reach millions within hours, creating an illusion of credibility. People believe what they want to believe, especially when a story seems emotionally satisfying. But in the end, a likeness is not proof, and a feeling is not forensic evidence. The McCanns, despite their pain, have handled these episodes with restraint. They have issued carefully worded statements, thanking people for caring, while cautioning against premature conclusions. Their main concern has always been the same: to protect the dignity of Madeleine's name, and not let it become a vehicle for public spectacle or personal delusion. There is, however, a deeper lesson here, one that goes beyond the McCann case. In an era of instant virality, truth becomes fragile. The speed at which stories spread often outpaces the speed at which facts can be verified. And when people conflate sympathy with certainty, justice suffers. False claims, no matter how heartfelt or convincing, can harm real investigations, mislead the public, and exploit real families still waiting for answers. As of 2025, no one who has claimed to be Madeleine McCann has been confirmed as such. DNA has ruled out every possibility, and background checks have uncovered inconsistencies. And while many of these individuals carry their own pain, their stories are not hers. Madeleine McCann is still missing, and the person who took her, or knows what happened to her, is still unknown. In June 2020, 13 years after Madeleine McCann vanished from her family's holiday apartment in Praia da Luz, Portuguese authorities confirmed what German police had just revealed. They had a suspect, not just a theory, a man, a name, a location, and perhaps a turning point. His name was Christian Brueckner, and his presence at the center of the Madeleine McCann investigation was not coincidental. Brueckner, a German national born in 1976, had long been known to police across Europe for an extensive criminal history. While his past included multiple offenses ranging from theft and drug trafficking, it was his record of serious convictions against others that placed him in the darkest corners of suspicion. In 2020, investigators announced that Brueckner's mobile phone had been traced to the exact area surrounding the Ocean Club in Praia da Luz on the night Madeleine disappeared, May the 3rd, 2007. The mobile tower data didn't just place him in the same town, it placed him within meters of the McCann's holiday apartment during the precise time frame in which their daughter went missing. It was the first piece of technological evidence that directly linked a known predator to the crime scene. But what elevated Brueckner from a potential presence to a central suspect wasn't just the data. It was his own words. According to investigators, a former acquaintance of Brueckner later came forward, claiming that the German man had boasted about taking a child in Portugal. Another witness reported that Brueckner had previously made disturbing remarks about children, reflecting deeply harmful impulses. These statements, though not admissible as proof of guilt, added a psychological dimension to an already grim profile. Just 2 years prior to Madeleine's disappearance, in 2005, Brueckner committed a brutal home invasion and attack on a 72-year-old American woman at her home in the Algarve, just a short distance from where the McCanns had stayed. He broke into her home, restrained and seriously assaulted her, then vanished. The case remained cold until years later, when DNA evidence linked him to the crime. He was convicted in Germany and sentenced to 7 years in prison, a sentence he is still serving as of mid-2025. The disturbing proximity, both in geography and in method, to Madeleine's case did not go unnoticed by prosecutors. They believed the two incidents might share more than coincidence. Brueckner had been living in a camper van in the Algarve at the time. He was known to drift between countries, often using fake names and forged IDs. He fit the psychological profile of a mobile offender, someone who acts alone, moves silently between borders, and exploits gaps in jurisdiction to escape justice. In June 2020, German authorities took the extraordinary step of publicly naming him as the prime suspect. That same month, the German prosecutor overseeing the case stated with confidence that they believed Madeleine Mccann was no longer alive and that Brueckner was responsible. However, they refused to release details about the nature of the evidence, sparking both hope and skepticism across Europe. Then came the next phase of the search. In May 2023, investigators launched a large-scale search operation at the Arade Reservoir, approximately 50 kilometers east of Praia da Luz. This was not a random location. It was an area Brueckner was known to frequent, and authorities believed he may have disposed of evidence there. Over several days, excavators cleared soil, giant pumps drained wells, and forensic teams sifted through acres of wilderness, looking for any trace of Madeleine. They recovered several pieces of cloth, a few fragments of bone later identified as animal remains, and unknown fibers, which were taken for lab analysis. But despite media speculation, no direct evidence linking Brueckner to Madeleine was ever publicly confirmed. The search, while methodical and highly visible, yielded no breakthrough. Meanwhile, Brueckner remained imprisoned in Germany, serving his 7-year sentence for the 2005 attack. But in June 2025, a new concern arose. He may be released early, as soon as September 2025, after reportedly having his court fines paid and time reduced for behavior and legal technicalities. The prospect of the prime suspect in the McCann case walking free has set off alarms across Europe. Despite years of investigation, no formal charges have been filed against Brueckner in connection with Madeleine's disappearance. German prosecutors say they continue to gather evidence, but time is running out. If Brueckner is released, there's no guarantee he will remain in Germany. He has lived in Spain, Italy, Portugal, and other parts of Europe. His itinerant lifestyle and history of evading authorities make him a flight risk. What makes Brueckner such a uniquely dangerous figure in this story is not just what he may have done, but how easily he could do it again. He lived off the grid, often in a camper van or abandoned homes, moving from village to village, often using stolen identities. He operated without routine, without roots. He had been known to film his assaults, and though German police reportedly seized several storage devices from him, the contents have never been disclosed to the public. He is not a man with a past. He is a man with a pattern, and the danger lies in what might happen if that pattern is allowed to continue unchecked. For the McCanns, the news of Brueckner's potential release has reopened deep wounds. They have urged authorities across Europe to act swiftly. Public pressure is mounting. Journalists have described the case as a race against time, because if new evidence emerges after Brueckner is freed, after he's vanished again, there may be no second chance to bring him to justice. To this day, Madeleine Mccann remains missing. There is no confirmed sighting, no remains, no conclusive evidence, just a thread, taut, fraying, and fragile, leading back to a man who was there that night, near that apartment, when a little girl disappeared without a sound. His name is Christian Brueckner, and the world is still waiting for answers. In a shocking twist in 2025, a former German criminal police officer paid a large sum of money to reduce Christian Brueckner's prison sentence by 111 days. This development has not only stunned the case, but has also sparked international outrage, raising questions about motives and connections within the justice system. It has added further complexity to the case and increased suspicions regarding internal relationships within the German police force. The woman in question, a former employee of the Federal Criminal Police Office of Germany, BKA, explained that she made the payment because she believed the fine imposed on Brueckner was unfair. She stated that Brueckner's behavior toward prison staff was insulting, and that for this reason, the fine should be reduced. However, this explanation failed to convince the public and investigators. Her justification was deemed weak, especially as questions began to arise about her honesty and true motivations. The involvement of a public official, who might have been entrusted with upholding justice, in protecting and assisting such a serious criminal as Brueckner, raised suspicions of internal manipulation and authority violations. In fact, this woman was not entirely a stranger to the case. She had previously been involved in setting up surveillance equipment in Brueckner's prison cell to gather information for investigations. This job required precision and professionalism, but her direct involvement with a suspect and subsequent intervention to reduce his sentence made her relationship with Brueckner murky. This raised clear concerns of a conflict of interest, suggesting she may have had personal reasons to protect him. The act of a law enforcement officer seemingly going against the public interest and manipulating the legal system could have serious consequences for the integrity of investigations. The woman's actions add another layer of complexity to an already twisted case. As her involvement in Brueckner's case was scrutinized, it was clear that the legal and ethical lines were increasingly blurred. If her intervention to reduce the sentence of a man suspected of committing heinous crimes was driven by personal motives, it only deepens the sense of a compromised system. This incident shocked both law enforcement agencies and the international public. If new evidence emerges after Brueckner's release, evidence that could prove him to be responsible for Madeleine Mccann's disappearance, can the case still be brought to a just conclusion, be fairly prosecuted? Will reopening the case face insurmountable challenges due to the loss of valuable time or the potential of a missed opportunity to convict? Meanwhile, this situation has added significant pressure on the German justice system. Legal experts have pointed out that releasing Brueckner after new information emerges could lead to a massive crisis of public trust, as it would demonstrate negligence in addressing the movements of dangerous criminals, particularly when suspicions exist about the relationship between officials and the suspect. This event also reveals a troubling reality. Not all criminals face justice equitably, and it could set a dangerous precedent for how serious cases are handled in the future. Brueckner's release could have unforeseen consequences if he continues his pattern of behavior or attempts to escape the scrutiny of law enforcement. The release of a key figure in a high-profile case like this could not only slow down the process of uncovering the truth, but also threaten the ability to ever bring the perpetrator to justice. The story of Christian Brueckner is not just about the disappearance of a child. It reflects a justice system under intense scrutiny, where personal motives and internal manipulation can severely harm the investigative process, leaving victims like Madeleine Mccann to continue living in a cycle of injustice. In a world filled with suspicion, twists like these only make justice harder to attain than ever before. In 2023, a significant development occurred when authorities announced the discovery of several objects near the original crime scene. These items, weathered by years of exposure, were found close to the Ocean Club resort where Madeleine vanished in 2007. Although time and environmental factors had worn them down, forensic teams remained hopeful that some form of evidence could still be extracted. The items were sent for thorough analysis at a forensic laboratory in Germany, where specialists began testing them for DNA and other materials. The technological advancements in forensic science in 2025 provided new hope. Experts have made significant strides, developing methods capable of extracting minute traces of biological material even from objects long exposed to the elements. There was a possibility that advances in science could still yield crucial results. The lab was tasked with identifying any genetic material that might link these objects to Madeleine, Brueckner, or anyone else. However, the situation grew more complex with the looming prospect of Christian Brueckner's potential early release. If he were to be freed before any new evidence could be definitively linked to him, the legal significance of the findings could be compromised. The discovery might no longer hold the same weight if Brueckner was no longer under strict legal surveillance. This raised the question of whether evidence discovered after his release would be sufficient to move forward with a prosecution. If new evidence were to surface after his freedom, it could be too late. Thus, the timing of these forensic breakthroughs became critical. The closer they came to Brueckner's release, the less meaningful they might be in a legal sense. In the wake of such revelations, the global community, alongside the Mccann family, found themselves trapped in a paradox. While forensic science offered hope, the legal window to act was rapidly closing. For the Mccanns, every passing moment felt like a race against time. In the end, the question became not only about whether new technology could solve the case, but whether it would matter if the suspect was no longer held accountable. The case of Madeleine Mccann is one marked by systemic failures at multiple levels of law enforcement across 3 countries: Portugal, the UK, and Germany. These failures were a culmination of mistakes, miscommunications, and bureaucratic hurdles that hindered the pursuit of justice. What sets this case apart is the complicated interplay of international law enforcement and the failure to fully prosecute the main suspect. When comparing it to other well-known missing persons cases that were resolved, it's clear that justice wasn't just delayed, it was obstructed. The investigation began in Portugal, where the immediate reaction was poorly managed. Police didn't secure the crime scene and failed to collect crucial forensic evidence, instead entertaining theories of a child wandering off while allowing the apartment to be contaminated. This lack of forensic preservation severely hampered the chances of discovering the truth early on. To make matters worse, the Portuguese police turned their focus on the Mccanns as suspects, diverting attention from potential perpetrators. In 2011, the case was handed over to British authorities. The British response during the years that followed was often characterized by a lack of urgency. The UK authorities failed to put enough pressure on Portugal to continue investigating effectively. By 2017, after an enormous amount of taxpayer money had been spent, British police declared they were unable to identify any significant leads. It wasn't until 2020 that the case took a dramatic turn when German authorities identified Christian Brueckner as the prime suspect. But Germany's investigation was not without its own problems. The initial announcement that they had clear evidence Madeleine was deceased, yet with no details provided, left the public with more questions. For years, they had not coordinated adequately with Portuguese authorities. Additionally, despite finding significant leads like phone data placing Brueckner near the scene, the lack of collaboration between police agencies meant the case was not solved swiftly. When comparing Madeleine McCann's case to others, such as that of Natalie Holloway in Aruba, it becomes evident that speed, coordination, and transparency can significantly impact the outcome. In many of those cases, there was a more immediate and sustained international response and a more unified effort between agencies. The key issue with the Madeleine McCann case was that the justice system itself created barriers. It wasn't just the lack of action, it was the institutional failures that compounded the problem. Justice isn't just about finding the perpetrator. It's also about ensuring the system works. Christian Brueckner, despite being a prime suspect, may soon walk free. If that happens, it would be a stark failure of the justice system to bring about real consequences. The case of Madeleine McCann remains tragically unresolved. As her case lingers, the McCann family lives in a constant state of emotional turmoil, unable to move forward. The hope for justice has been repeatedly dashed. Despite these struggles, the McCanns have never given up. They have been vocal in their belief that a child cannot just disappear on their own, and that someone must be held responsible. Their message is clear. Continue the search and never forget Madeleine. They have pleaded with the international community not to forget, stressing that the case should remain a priority and urging the public to continue applying pressure on authorities. Central to this fight is the figure of Christian Brueckner. A man with a history of serious offenses against children, he has been described as someone who provokes law enforcement, often going into hiding and using multiple false identities. His pattern of criminal behavior suggests he could easily reoffend, if not properly incarcerated. His ability to evade authorities by living a transient life has made it difficult to build a solid case against him. The danger posed by Brueckner is compounded by his continuing mobility, moving across borders and using aliases. The potential for him to reoffend is significant if he is released from prison without facing charges related to Madeleine's case. The McCanns fear that if he is freed, he could slip back into society and potentially harm other children. As his release date nears, the possibility of other children disappearing has become a disturbing topic of speculation. Many are asking, if another child goes missing in 2026, will Brueckner be investigated again? In addition to the external threats posed by his freedom, there are concerns about possible internal interference within the investigation. The delays in prosecuting Brueckner have led to suspicions that someone within the system might be protecting him. These internal obstacles have raised serious questions about the integrity of the investigation and whether his freedom is being enabled by more than just his own cunning. Ultimately, Madeleine McCann remains missing, and Christian Brueckner is on the verge of being released. This combination of unresolved tragedy and legal uncertainty makes the case even more fraught with unanswered questions. The McCann's message is as relevant today as it was in 2007. Justice for Madeleine is not just about finding the perpetrator, but about ensuring that the system works and that the perpetrator is held accountable. As the clock ticks down on a flawed pursuit of justice, the story of Madeleine Mccann leaves us with questions that echo long after the screen goes dark. How does this chronicle of missed chances and systemic failures make you feel? When a family's pleas are met with suspicion, and a known predator may walk free, where does accountability truly lie? This is more than just a case. It's a test of our collective conscience. What will we demand of the systems meant to protect the most vulnerable among us, to ensure that no other child's name becomes a synonym for a search that never ends? Thanks for watching. How do you feel about these arguments and theories? Does it give you a different perspective on the case? Leave your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel to receive the latest notifications.